Well, that's very interesting. There's no image of me. It's okay. Back again. No image. Welcome to a very dark and radio-like show. Once again, we're having technical difficulties that I would probably say has to do with it not accessing my camera for some reason. It was until I came on. So let's see what happens here if I try to fix this. I can go to the integrated one, which also doesn't work. That the integrated one being in my laptop, and this is the Pro camera, and that's not working either. So I'm not sure what's going on. Now I've got a wheel going round and round, and I'm hoping that when I bring Raven on, who has limited time. Oh, look! Wow, that's the wrong camera, and so that's I don't know what's going on here. And now it's adjusting itself, and I don't like that camera, and it's there. No, it's the crappy one again. So you may have to deal with this low resolution piece of garbage that's part of my laptop. Okay. Okay. It's still not working. It makes no sense. Go back to integrated, go back to this. This is just too weird. Okay. Well, no. Anyway, I'm going to bring Raven on. Hi, Raven. This is not going the way I wanted it to.
I know. I sent you a note all day. All kinds of weird technical stuff is going on. I've had dropped calls. I can't hear them. They can't hear me. I call and the phones won't ring. I'm on Zoom and the whole thing shuts down. My TV's been turning off. I think we're having a magnetic storm. Yesterday and today, we're supposed to be in the path of some, radiation from the sun. There were just two sunspots. So I'm imagining I've had two tech people today tell me that they've seen things in the past 48 hours that they've never seen, that they don't understand. So I don't think it's you, Steve. Not at least not this time.
Well, I'm not taking it personally. I just like things to go the way I like them to go. And
yeah, I hear you.
As you'll notice now, the good camera is working magically, and it's probably because of your magic that you carry with you at all times that it came back. So, thanks for being here. I know you have a flooded basement.
I do, but
how did that happen?
They've been working on the lines out in the street, and they did something funky, and it backed up into my basement. And at least somebody's coming out tonight to see if they can't fix the problem, or at least stop the problem until the city gets out on Monday and really does it right.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not fun.
Well, as I was starting to say, we have some amazing stuff coming your way in terms of films, and sharing with you two special people's stories. One which will be on next Saturday, and then 2 weeks after that will be Judy's. We're going to do Anne this next Saturday, and Judy and her husband Andy have been here visiting with us, and we've been going around the town, and this town is very haunted. And there's something going on with all of us. I'm finding as I get older, Mary seems to suggest that we're getting closer to the veil, or the veil's getting thin, or something. But it's almost like I've had more abilities activated that weren't really working at full capacity before. So there was this one store on the boulevard in in Main Street here in Ventura, and Main Street in Ventura was started around 1776. So a lot of the buildings are really, really old, and there's a lot of history there, and a lot of good things and bad things have happened. And there's this one store I knew about that Mary couldn't stand to be in it, nor could I, because when you go into it, you can feel something. But when you go to this one particular spot, thank you, Alchemist. Thank you very much. Wow. You could feel this squeezing of the head, a dizziness, a disorientation, like the floor is turning to rubber. I've experienced this many, many times. I went to a friend's house recently up on Woodland Hills. It was worse there in his kitchen. Neither one of us could stand to be in it. And Judy and I both knew, looking at this building across the street and looking up at it, that something happened on the top floor. You could feel it all the way across the street. It was so strong. And that's when Judy said she felt that someone jumped out the window. And I could concur with that, because there was this one particular window we were looking at. And all this kind of stuff's been going on. Mm-hmm. All this started last Friday with us watching The Fourth Kind, which set me off. We only watched half of it. And then the next day was the premiere of The Gift, which was a very emotional piece that I did. And then the next day was our support group meeting. And then we had out-of-town visitors come to do their stories, and it just kept going. And here we are next Friday. And
the energy is just increasing.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to going off flying airplanes tomorrow with my friend, just to decompress.
Yeah. That'll be a good thing. You know, I think as we get older, though, we also, because we slow down a little, I think we are more inclined to listen. I think it's not just that we're more sensitive. I think we're finally allowing ourselves to listen. So we take to heart things that we would have brushed off before or ignored before. So, but yeah, I do. I know what you're saying. For me, it's just almost all the time. There's something, happening in the liminal zone. If I direct my attention to it, then, I can figure out what's going on. And I think, too, that it's reaching a critical mass in the general population, that there's so many people who are telling their stories, that it's having a ripple effect through everybody's consciousness. And we're all becoming a little more sensitive.
Yeah. One of the things that I wanted to bring up and talk to you about, and I hope that many of you here have read Whitley's books, and in particular, in Raven's case, read it was Confirmation?
Breakthrough.
No. Breakthrough, that's correct. Breakthrough. Where he talked about the cabin and the time that you were over there with a number of other people, and you all had your experiences, and yours in particular. If you haven't read Breakthrough, I highly recommend reading it. And a lot about Raven's story is in there. I did, of course, the artwork, I think many of you seen, of her moment with the being coming in the window that was at the foot of her bed. But Raven's had lots of experiences, and she has worked in this arena for a very, very long time, knows a lot about it. And what I wanted to talk about was as a subject, because we haven't been doing subjects so much. We've been kind of just having a guest on talking about what their work was or what they experienced. But I wanted to address, I've been getting things from people, comments, and they're very concerned because they've been reading a certain psychologist and listening to him. He's written several books. I'm not going to mention any names because I don't know what the legal deal is here, but you're going to know who he is, because there was Dr. Mack, and we know how Dr. Mack felt about things, and I can mention his name, but there was another psychologist that sees this whole thing as a threat, and he's very, very terrified. He thinks that the hybrid program is to work against us, to hurt us. There's lots of people saying, I don't care what you say, Steve. People don't take you against your will and subject you to these things without your permission. And as you well know, that's a perspective, but it's not a perspective based on all the information that we might have. And from my point of view, and from what I've learned over time, that I'd always agreed to be part of this. So
Right.
I wasn't taken against my will.
Right.
And I've always known all along that this was something I was part of, and this is something was had to happen. And Judy speaks about this at the end of her rather intense interview that we did with her about her experience. And I've heard it from her, and I've heard it from you, and I've heard it from so many people that this whole experience is by design, and we've always been part of it since the beginning. And it's to benefit human beings, not to dominate them, invade them, take them over, and all these things that people think out of fear, because I mean, let's face it, we've gone through several versions of ourselves over the millions of years to arrive at this point. And still, despite everything, we have a big problem on Earth. And, maybe the hybrids, for lack of a better description, are really the next step in humanity. Maybe one that doesn't make war and hate each other and accepts each other, and it connects with nature, which is everything we're supposed to be doing. And so many of us are not. Now you can talk.
Well,
Please talk.
Certainly, I think that's certainly possible, especially in light of the fact that many of us have had experiences that reflect in some way the culture and the mythology of the Celts, that the beings resemble the little people or the she or the between, so that they're not really, in that sense, aliens coming from another place, as they are coming from another plane of existence. And that they have always been with us. Now, that's not to say that they're the only beings that have things to do with humans. And there's just
Correct.
like there are humans who are assholes, there are most likely also beings that don't have our best interest at heart. But these that we're talking about, the ones that the classic being that we're talking about with the big eyes and the oval head, I think in many of our experiences with them, there have been benefits. And I do agree with you that on some level, there is an agreement that we have a symbiotic relationship, that there is a gift, I think, that they also get from us, and that we receive a lot of gifts from them. And even when I was small, my sense of them was that one of the things that they received from me was my experience of emotions, because they don't experience emotions the same way that we do.
Yes.
With some sort of rich nectar for them. It was an energetic gift for them to experience through us what our emotions are. But again, for us also, the quieting of those emotions, or I won't say control because that's the wrong word, but the understanding of those emotions, our own emotions, keeps us from doing horrible things to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think that,
Right.
again, that give and take, there's the perspective that we get when we recognize we're part of this larger family that includes non-humans.
Yes.
Right. It puts us in a whole different mindset. And it puts us more in alignment with, so why can't we get along? I mean, we're all spinning around the globe on this little planet in the middle of nothing. What's wrong with us that we can't figure out how to get along? And I think, again, that there is, some sort of taboo that they can't come in and fix it.
Mm-hmm.
They're not supposed to come in and fix it, but they can give us hints and clues and suggestions and experiences that open us up to evolving into better beings than we have been, right? And I think that's the absolute truth.
Yeah, and it isn't interesting that so many people in this community are very peaceful, very kind, uh,
Mhm.
capable of critical thinking, aware of their environment, aware of where they put their foot before they step down, in case they step on something, that's a life, how much they cherish life, and then you have all the other people on the planet that don't operate and behave that way, and so it begs the question, that the people that are having these experiences is are they this way because of this experience? Maybe. Were they chosen because they're that way to this experience? And I think it's kind of all of it. When the last time that I was meditating, and I do this every morning when I meditate before yoga, is I have this conversation with this spirit, which I can only imagine is or get an idea of as maybe the visitors. And the one time I asked it, and I said, "Tell me something I can't possibly know," and it said, "Well, I can't do that because I am you and you are me, and we both know everything because we're connected to it."
Right.
And it was just okay. That's really interesting, And like Mary said, and we are all together. Well, they didn't go that far, but it takes you back to John Lennon and the Walrus. But
But I think that's the memo.
we are
Ultimately,
them.
we are connected in
Yeah.
consciousness. We are one. And like, if we could
Yes.
get a better grip on that, we are one with the trees. We are one with each other. We are one
Yes.
with the planet. We
Yes.
are one with the animals. We share consciousness. So anything we do to the living planet, ultimately, we are doing to ourselves. And we do a lot of not very smart things.
No, we don't.
So it's but another conversation around this though is I'm finding that the younger people are not as frightened, not in that way that when we talk sometimes to people who are just recalling their experiences and they have terror from being a child, they were very afraid. I'm
Mhm.
finding that the younger people, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds are not as terrified, are not afraid in the same way, that they're cautious and might be a little freaked out, but they're more curious than they are terrified. I think there's something relaxing in the nature of human beings that's allowing a level of acceptance that wasn't there before.
Kids talk to ghosts all the time. They're not afraid of them.
That's right. Oh, my
It's the
granddaughter certainly does. And I mean, and her, my daughter got married about a year ago. And so my beautiful son-in-law, who has had no truck with any of this until now, right? He's been
yeah.
inundated with experiences that he doesn't know what to do with. And, my granddaughter, I keep telling my granddaughter, go outside, drag everybody out and look at the sky. This past couple of weeks and the moon has
Yeah,
been
look at the stars, people. Go someplace where you can see them. They're really there. It's not a myth.
well, they're in the middle of nowhere. So they just have to walk out on their
Oh,
jet.
good.
Yeah, yeah, they're in Nevada. So again, a beautiful thing is so my granddaughter, who is perfectly fine with aliens, visitors, whatever you want to call them. I mean, she told her stepdad, all you have to do is watch for a while. They're there. Well, don't you know? A couple nights later, he got up. He went to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. Went and stand outside, and he started seeing things. So he was freaked out. He called me, and he's like, "I don't want to have these experiences." I said, too late, too sad, too bad. You're with my
Yeah.
daughter and my granddaughter. You just got to relax and see what happens next.
You see the comment there from John?
Yes,
That's a,
absolutely. It's
that's a
true.
very good comment because that's exactly it. And I was going to get that. You took the thoughts right out of my mind. And it's like when we're children, we're innocent and we haven't been taught that abilities such as seeing ghosts, perceiving things
Right.
outside the normal realm of reality for most people are not. You can't do that. You get told that when you,
And
yeah,
we haven't been taught to fear what we don't understand. We just
exactly,
don't understand it, right? It's like if there's a big dog that comes up to us, we scritch it behind the ear. If it's an alien that comes up to it, a kid might also try to scritch it if you could find its ear. But it's a different experience when we get older and we're taught to bring fear to the table. And we're taught that anything that's different is to be seen as an enemy or a potential threat.
Yeah, and that's why that other psychologist who's wrote all the books and is talking all the time is really scaring people. And
Yes.
he's entitled to his opinion. He's entitled to his perspective. Everybody is. You know,
Well, the thing
I'm
with
not going to say he's wrong. I did say he was wrong, but I probably shouldn't have used that term. But
well, let's say it this way: he's not accurate for everyone. There may be
no,
some
yeah,
people for whom his opinion feels valid, but there are many, many, many people who don't have that kind of experience or don't reframe it that way,
right,
according to society's norms, society's bullshit, right? There are those humans who have evolved beyond what we've been taught to do and can have a return to innocence in that sense.
yeah, yeah. I'm more in touch with my inner child or being a child than I ever have been, but I always have been. But well, just today on my Facebook page, there's this friend of mine, John. He's he's very much part of the skeptical inquirer crowd, and Michael Shermer, and he's all science or nothing. And if you can't, he said something. He said, I said you can't. I said you can't prove, science can't prove that when the brain dies, you cease to exist. And he says, if they can't prove it, then why would you believe it? And I said, well, I don't believe it. I know it because I've had the experience of being dead or being in that realm. You didn't. No one was with me. I don't really care to prove it, but it's okay that you have that perspective. It's okay with me. It's fine.
Well,
So we can't discount people, and we can't tell them they're wrong, and we can't, because we need to bridge a gap.
well, there's also a misunderstanding about science, right? That there
Sure.
are plenty of things that science couldn't prove until the last 50 years. There are plenty of things that science can't prove that maybe 1,000 years in the future they will prove. Just because science can't prove it doesn't mean it isn't real. I mean, even science knows that, right? When the scientists say, we as human beings can only experience less than 1% of all known frequencies. That's all known frequencies. That's not even the ones science can't measure. Science can measure,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
So if we're told by science we can only experience less than 1% of all known frequencies, that means there's a hell of a lot of reality going on around us that we are unaware of. It doesn't mean it's not real. It means we don't have the equipment to perceive it. That's all it means.
Yeah, like element 115. I mean, when Lazar talked about that, they said there's no such thing, and now it's on the chart.
That's right. Exactly right. Just
Yeah.
because you can't prove it doesn't mean it's not real. There just hasn't been enough development to have the proof or even have the ability to prove some of these things.
So, Reagan, do you think it's safe to say that, because I sense this, that there's spirit all around us? I mean, obviously there is, but I'm referring specifically to the astral plane. The people think as in terms of the astral plane is out there, or it's heaven, or it's over there, but it's really all around us, and we're a part of it all the time. But we've been told that that it's not,
right,
and that you don't perceive things like that. And so, if people actually could see the people and the spirits that are around them, I wonder if I sense it and feel it all the time, but how are they going to deal with that when eventually it comes to a point in our evolution where it's unavoidable? It's starting to happen right now, and people don't want to believe it, and they're shutting it off. And when we were waiting to go into that store on the Main Street in Ventura, that old store, this very pretty lady came up, and it was closed, and I seen if I could sense it from outside the bars, but she showed up and opened the place up, and so I'm going to open up in a few minutes. So we went and walked around, and But before we did, I asked her, is there anything is there anything odd going on in here? She said, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, I've been in here and I felt like a lowering and I described what I felt. And I said, I felt the place is haunted, and her eyes widened a bit and she was very okay with it because she was young and she was very open to it. I could tell. She says many people have claimed that coming into the store, that they have asked her or told her, did you know this place is haunted?
Yeah.
And that was kind of cool because up to that point, Mary and I didn't know if what we were sensing was that for sure or not, or if it had ever been brought up before. And she said many people.
Absolutely. Well, I think too, anytime you can check it out, it's good to check it out. I'm sorry, I can't turn it off because I'm waiting for the plumber. But
right.
I had the experience recently myself. I had somebody offer to rent me a home, rent me a space, right?
Oh, yes. Please tell them.
So long story short, not only was the space wasn't finished and it wasn't suitable, but the property, the person who drove me there, now she's not into pretty much anything paranormal. The closest she's gets,
cut it off.
She reads Stephen King. That's as close as she gets, right?
Right.
But I'm going to tell you that when we drove through, I said, first of all, we're on our way there. And I say, well, where do I turn? He says, you turn through the hole in the bushes. I'm like, say what? Okay. So we turned through the hole in the bushes. She stopped the car and turned to me and said, I think I just drove into a Stephen King novel. And I said, The energy was that intense. It was completely unavoidable. So there were several buildings on the property. And it's very hard. So we go up to where we're supposed to be. I'm very clear. It's a big barn, and I'm clear that someone died. Someone was hung in that barn. And
you could cut it with a knife.
Yeah, it was spooky beans. And so my friend who was going to show me this place pointed to the house next to the one, and he said, oh yeah, that's the house that we can't get any renters to stay in because it's so haunted. And I'm like, this whole place is haunted. When I first came through the onto the property, I could see to my right this little sort of blue and white house. And I had the strong sense that there were dead women who were very angry. And I didn't say anything at the time to him. We just sort of chatted for a minute. He showed me the property. I said, absolutely not. And he told me that in the main house, things disappear. They vanish all the time. And I looked at the main house and I said, there's a portal in the main house. There's stuff coming and going in that house. No wonder you're losing things. But then I got home and sat with it, and I called him and I said, listen, I also want you to know that just coming through the property, that blue and white house, there are dead women there and they're angry. And he said, there's no house there. I said, there is too. My friend saw the house. We both looked at the house. He said, there's no house there. And then he showed me, he had to look back and find on the property that there had been houses there where I saw the house where there isn't one. And that there were women there, and that one of them was likely a brothel. And it's like, okay, well, there's where the angry dead women are coming from. But the house over by the barn where the energy was so thick and heavy, and the little house he showed me was, it was like a nightmare feeling to it. Anyway, also on the property, it had been an Underground Railroad location, and it had to be closed down at some point because they got caught. And he said, I said, listen, I don't know what the deal is with the barn, but I'm telling you, somebody got hung in the barn. He said, I know, I can't even go in the barn. My hair all stands up. And I said, you want me to live on this property? I said, no. But there was plenty of history though. So that area, right? That area is filled with restless dead people.
Right.
Could stand
Thank you, Mark.
some help, right? They could use some help. And so the more he digs, the more he discovers that the things that I felt and the things that my friend, again, who generally is not in touch, but that's how so strong it was, that they were absolutely accurate. He's uncovered more and more and more facts about things that happened there. So again, I think we are all becoming more sensitive, more sensitized. But yeah. Be moving there.
And I hear many people, and I can hear some people right now thinking, how does this relate? What does this have to do with people who are experiencing non-human intelligence and going aboard craft and all that stuff. It has everything to do with what they want us to be aware of and open up to. There's this vast reality that we've completely separated from long ago, and it was forced on us by our own people to lose connection with spirit in the spirit world.
Absolutely.
It can't be denied when it's starting to cram itself down your throat.
No.
And it's very much related and has been. Whitley has talked about this. And by the way, Whitley sends his love. He misses you, and he's so buried in his book right now. He said he couldn't be present tonight. I was gonna try to get him to visit, but he wanted to say hi and tell you that he loved you. So I almost forgot that. So yeah, so that is, and he has been, and I think you're going to find, I might be wrong, but, and I don't want to give away anything, but his book goes into this.
Good.
This is a very important book that he's writing and he's so obsessed with, and it's going to change the way we think about the whole visitor experience. And that's good.
Well, that space in which we'll call it the realm, the frequency, whatever you want to call it, in which the visitors live.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've been saying for a long time, it is the same plane of existence in which the dead live, at least where the newly dead live, right? And so I do think we're surrounded by that energy all the time. And I've certainly had, as time has gone on, more and more and more experiences, even just with talking to my clients. I had a client whose mother recently passed. And as she was getting ready to pass, he said to me, he was out of town, and he said, what do I do? Do I need to rush right back? And I said, I don't know. Let me think on it. And I had this experience of seeing his father, who had passed a few years ago, sitting on a park bench, waiting for the mom, waiting for his mother. And he said to me, tell him not to worry. It'll be okay. She'll wait till he gets back. And I passed that message along. And sure enough, she passed like the day after he got back. She waited for him, as I knew she would. Why? Because his father told me. Right. So things like that have been happening. I mean, that has happened a lot to me in the past handful of years. Just unsolicited experiences of the dead stepping forward and giving me information. And I wouldn't call myself, a medium. It's not like I sit down and do that. It's just that they're always present to me.
No, Raven, but you can do that.
Oh, I know. I mean, yes.
You accept it, and it's just, it's interesting how it works. It's not how I thought it worked, but when you actually see a spirit, it's not always the spirit standing in front of you or across the room looking at you.
Right.
It's in your mind, and they look right at you in your mind's eye.
Yes.
And that was, I found that rather exhilarating, because it wasn't me imagining something. This really had a force of its own. And I was at my friend's house in Woodlands Hills, and this woman wearing white, and she was probably in her 50s, maybe early 60s. I can describe her in every detail, and the way she pushed her face into my mind's eye and smiled at me like, you can see me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm going to stay open to it. I'm not going to, be afraid. I'm not going to cut it off because it's so spooky. I want to embrace it, because this is part of what we've always been part of, and the indigenous people we're part of, and we've cut ourselves off from. And I think it's the reason we're having every problem we're having as human beings in this world.
Don't find it spooky. I don't find it spooky.
No.
Yes, somebody made a comment earlier, not everybody, not all of them are benevolent, and that not all humans are benevolent. Not all.
No, that's certainly true.
Not all dead people are benevolent. I mean, we have the full spectrum, no matter where we turn, right? We have the full spectrum. So,
right. Newly dead energy, newly dead energy different? There's a question from Jill.
I experience it differently. I experience the newly dead, how can I say this, a little louder, a little brighter, because I think they're a little more, I don't know, I'm making this up, but I imagine it's because they're so recently separated from this reality that they still resonate partially in this frequency. But to me, the newly dead seem brighter and more solid, and they have more color, around them and to them. That's how I experienced the
Well, that's
newly.
certainly true with the gift. I don't know if you got a chance to watch The Gift yet. It's kind of a long one, but it's about my girlfriend that died during the night, and I
Mhm.
told you about that whole experience, Judy. And it was certainly colorful, and she looked beautiful, and she was so excited.
Yes,
She was bursting to
yes,
share with me that,
yes,
that there is an afterlife, and that there's also beings from other worlds here, and they're
yes.
part of it. So,
Yeah,
and
every
she was newly dead. I mean, literally within, according to what I learned from the detectives and the paramedics and the timing of it all, it was exactly at the time that I had the dream. And it wasn't a dream, because there's no way I could have a dream about someone who's 24 years old, my girlfriend, staying at a friend's house, dying in the night from a brain aneurysm. There's
right.
no way I could have known that. And certainly the way they found her, I couldn't have known.
Hmm.
I knew
But
it in every detail.
yeah, but you did know, right? Because you were
Yeah. But she pulled me out. I know she did. She just came straight to me. I was asleep. No, you don't. Out you come.
yeah,
And point blank, that's how it was. And she had to share it. But then she had to go. She couldn't stay there long. She could only stay there for so long. And then she had to go. But everything's okay. Don't worry about me. I'm fine.
right. Well, that's how when my brother-in-law died suddenly, he fell, he hit his head on a curb, he went to the hospital, he died of a brain bleed. But that night, before anybody else in the family, so I live in Ohio, they lived in Denver, but his grandchild, who was at the time only 3.5, woke up calling to her mom, Mommy, it's too bright in here. And my niece went into her room and she said, Grandpa was here and he was too bright. He just told me he's okay. And then she was like, What? And she called her mother, my sister, only to
Hmm.
find out that, yeah, in fact, he had
He had
died.
just passed.
He had just passed. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same thing with my mom,
Yeah.
dreaming about her grandmother showing up at the end of her bed
Yeah.
and telling her that she loved her, and how important she was to her, and she had to leave. And then my mom wakes up to the sound of the telephone ringing in the hallway, and it's her mom picking up the phone and breaking down, and then coming in and saying, your grandmother just died.
Yeah.
So you will find, people who are listening, you will find that many people who have this experience will have these same abilities in their life, or these same experiences related to losing someone and them coming to them, or having a dream one night and you're with them. And I mean, it's prolific, I'm finding. And so there's no question that these two experiences aren't two experiences, they're one experience, and it's all related. And boy, do the visitors know about this.
That's right. It's a
And this
kind.
is their realm,
They can move back and forth between the realms.
and so can we.
And yeah, we
But we've
can.
lost that ability because it was turned off in us.
Well, we don't believe it. I don't know that we've lost it as much as we
Yeah,
don't use it. Like we forgot where the door is, right? It's more like that. Like there are times I think when we can and do cross, like when you had the dream that wasn't a dream, right? I think we can and do, but it's also something that I think we can practice and get better at.
right.
And the more we practice it and the more we trust our instinct, the better we can get at crossing the divide and coming back, or of having one foot here and one foot there, which is often the way it happens for me. I'm often here and I'm there. I'm here and I'm seeing and hearing somebody on the other side simultaneously. But I'm very clear that I am as much there as I am here.
Exactly. And in the end, it's certainly going to make it, oh, there's Judy. It's going to make it much easier for us to transition,
Yeah. Oh,
because when you're completely cut off from any understanding or belief or knowing of this realm of existence beyond your physical form, you could be, as a soul, very terrified and maybe even become trapped. I don't know, but that won't happen anymore if we all accept that we're more than our physical selves, and we are constantly in touch with that astral realm. I like the term astral because it really, it's much better than the realm of the dead or the land of the dead, because no one's really dead, you know.
Right. Yeah. Well, the dead aren't dead, and they don't like being called dead, by the way,
Oh
because they're
no.
not. Right.
Yeah, I've been looking and listening to a lot of old tapes done in the 50s and 60s where clairvoyants had made contact with people who are on the other side. And what got me about it was that they're different mediums and they're channeling different people at different times and recording it on tape, and it's consistent.
Yes.
It's 95% consistent
Yes.
what they experienced there. I remember this one where this guy who died on a ship during World War II and was drowned suddenly found himself walking down the street, and it looked like Earth and everything. He said, I felt like me, and it was quiet, then he met this lady, and she brought him inside. Um, and there was a house there. It was a house, and she had a dog there. And in their conversation, he started to realize that he had passed on, and that this was it was a level. There were several levels, but this was the one that was in between our physical earth and the next step. And she talked about how a lot of people chose to stay there because they could have their house, their pets were there,
Right.
and basically you were in charge of your reality at that point.
Yep.
It was just really interesting to hear it, and I thought, well, that's unique. And so I started listening to some others, and they described the same thing over and over again. And some people moved on, and some people decided that their work down here wasn't done.
Wasn't done.
And
Yeah.
yeah, it sounds very cliche, and of course, the skeptics are going to they're going to express that, and I understand it. I completely understand their perspective and how they would feel that way. But and I hate to use the word that they've been programmed, but we all have, and it's really just breaking that old programming and getting beyond it, and then the universe starts to talk and open up and open to you.
But
And again,
also,
go ahead.
skeptics until they have an experience that they can't nail down, that
Right.
so pushes them out of the box that they can't explain it away, pretend it away. And that often happens. I have had people, again, that I've worked with as clients, and I don't generally volunteer that I, can hear the dead or whatever happens, but I certainly, oh yeah, I love Robert Monroe.
Me
I read
too.
all
I did his program, and I read all his books. I agree.
but I have found that even sometimes the most skeptical of skeptics, once they have an experience, then all bets are off. Then they're interested. Now they want to know what's going on. Now they're like, I had no idea. It's like
It's
exactly
understandable.
right. You can't get somebody who's never seen a rainbow to understand what it looks like by you describing it.
Yeah, and you have to be kind. You have to be understanding, because if you're to bridge this gap, uh, you're not gonna win over anyone by saying, well, if you don't believe me, and that's just ridiculous. You know what people do? They get angry
Sure.
because the skeptic says, well, you have no proof, and this is all crazy, and yada yada yada. um, I understand getting annoyed by it. I understand getting angry about it. But what I have found as I've been getting older is that I care less about proving anything all the time. I
Yeah.
just want the people who don't understand it, who want the proof, to have experiences, as you said, that they can't nail down, that they can't explain to themselves. I want them to have those experiences themselves. And so it's important that we keep the channels open, and
Yeah.
and not be mean in our response.
Yeah.
Be civil.
I have nothing to prove. It doesn't matter to me at all.
No,
If
no.
and if anybody believes anything I say, quite frankly. But that other side, sometimes the skeptics, when I've asked, well, have you ever had something odd happen? And then they tell me these incredible stories. And in telling me the story, they hear themselves and say, wait a minute, that was really, I don't know why I didn't notice how weird that was before. I've had that happen too. Like I had someone who is like, oh, there's nothing after death. There's no spirits. There's no this, there's no that. And then he tells me this story about how on the 20th anniversary of his mother's death, that he found a watch in the middle of a field, that he picked it up and it was stopped at exactly the time of his mother's death.
Right.
And he tells me this story. And it's like, okay, well, there's something like, that's not a mistake, or, it's like those meaningful coincidences are taps on the shoulder by the universe.
Right.
We're always being spoken to, but we're being spoken to in a language that is symbolic and emotional. So we're waiting for words, we're waiting for a text message from the great beyond. It doesn't happen that way. That's not how it works.
And always they will say, you have no proof. And I would always say back to them, well, with all due respect, you have no proof to the contrary.
Right.
Where's your proof that I didn't have that experience? And that sort of ends it right there. But it's not being mean. Raven, can you tell us about the visitor in your room? I promised in the description that we would talk about that, and we have 15 minutes left in the show. I know you've gone over it before, but Rachel, I don't think, has heard it.
That's fine. And we're referring to the visitor at Whitley's cabin, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was invited to the cabin for the weekend in hopes that something might happen, because Anne handpicked people who had a tendency to have experiences and weren't terrified by them. And the theory was, if a handful of people were together, that maybe something was more likely to happen. So
you were all handpicked.
Yeah, we were handpicked. So that night, we went to bed pretty early, as I recall, and I was asleep. And I was hot. I was flipping and flopping, and I kind of pushed the covers back. I had one leg under the blanket. And anyway, I woke up to see a visitor crouched down on the window ledge, because I felt something that I thought, I was sure it was a skunk or a raccoon come onto the bed, right? I felt something like now I have a cat, right? So it's that feeling.
I saw it in the background.
Right. So the kitty. So I could feel something come onto the bed, and I turned to see what it was, because my thought was, oh, I hope I don't get skunked, right, or bit by a raccoon. And as I turned, what I think is an animal, is the foot of a visitor down on the bed, leaning against my leg, and the visitor in the window, crouched, right? So we looked at each other, and I was like, oh my God, I'm wide awake and I'm seeing what I'm seeing. And the visitor had a hand.
That is something.
And my instinct was to touch it. Like my curiosity was greater than my fear. So I touched its hand. And when I did, a current, an electrical charge, not unpleasant, just high, like a lot of vibration, ran down my arm and down the side of my body into my leg, where its foot was leaning through the covers up against my leg. And at that moment, I had a clear impression of this message: what do you want me to do? And I said in my mind back to it, go down the hall, because I knew Whitley had cameras set up. He was trying to capture something. And it took off back out the window. And I was hoping it was going to go down the hall. I kind of thought maybe it would leap across the bed, but it didn't do that. It disappeared back out the window. And I sat back against the wall. I scooted up and I sat all the way up. And then I kept having this experience of seeing, with my eyes open or closed, I was seeing the Eye of Horus. And for some reason, that scared me more than the visitor. I mean, the visitor was the visitor, but I was seeing this and I didn't understand it. And I didn't know why I was seeing it, eyes open or eyes closed. And so I sat there, I stayed in bed until it started to get light out. And then I got up and I peed, and I went to sit at the kitchen table, only to see that there were several other people up. And at that point, Whitley came down the stairs with pens and paper and said, don't talk to each other, write down your experiences. And we did. And then we shared notes after the fact. And so one of the things I discovered was that the visitor, in fact, well, it didn't go down the hall in front of the cameras, but it did go through the side door into the living room where someone else was sleeping and lifted the foot of their bed and woke them up. And then what that person saw was a visitor kind of hovering. And what he said was that it had this hood and that it was very Egyptian. And he was reminded of Horus. And I thought, well, okay, there's my connection. So it was a memo, like I was given a symbol that then I would recognize later so that I would know for sure this was real. This really happened. Right. And of course, the other thing was I had by that time had a very intense allergic reaction. I couldn't hardly see. My eyes were swollen and goopy and red. I couldn't breathe. I was sneezing and sniffling, and I had to take some of Whitley's allergy medicine because I was so bad off. And I, of course, didn't know anything about that at the time. But that was one of the things that Anne then later said was that's one of the markers of a real close encounter is that people often have intense allergic reactions, which I didn't know that ahead of time either.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of my experience at Whitley's.
Wow. You know, you described that the touching and that energy, kind of like electrical, but really not. More like a vibration of. I know what you were describing because in the gift, I talk about all the events that led up to that experience with Judy and her passing. And one of them was I was in the backyard in Burbank, and I saw a light whizzing around the hills, and I knew it was. It wasn't a plane. I knew it was them. Let's just be honest. I knew that was a UFO or some orb or something. And in my mind, I remember my friend saw it too. And of course he doesn't remember it now, but he saw it, and I sort of beckoned it in my mind to come closer. Yeah, let's see. And I was just sort of kidding around, and it did. It like heard me. And you've heard this from other people, and it just came right into the backyard, and it wasn't very big. It was bigger than a basketball. It was, pretty good size, and it was all white, and it just came right in front of me. And then I started seeing all these images passing across it. I can't remember all of them, like images of landscapes and buildings and things. And then all of a sudden, there was this typical gray face, and I just felt this urge, like I had to touch it. So I reached out and I grabbed it. I didn't try to hurt it or dislodge it. I just put my hands on it, and I felt that same exact thing that you described. And it made this sound that was like mechanical electronic drum or something. It was just this, I can't even describe it with my mouth. I'm making the sound. I can't. If I heard it done with the synthesizer, it would be, but it made a sound. And I don't remember anything after that, except that we were in the backyard with our telescopes.
Right.
And I still don't remember what happened after that. It's all blank to me. I suppose maybe if I went to Yvonne and had regression, I could maybe learn more, but it's not necessary. Not anymore.
Yeah.
That's really something. Wow. So anything, let's see, I turned off the comments. Well, I was showing everyone that piece of art I did so long ago now, back in 94, taken from Breakthrough. So
I'm looking at it. It's above my desk.
Oh, you have that. Okay.
Yeah. Whitley sent it to me years ago. So yeah, it's right here in my office.
Oh, I'll be damned. Yeah. Did you ever write any letters to Whitley before you met him?
I did. I wrote the very first letter I wrote was after I saw the book Communion. And that was only a few days after I had asked my children, who were pretty young at the time, but I'd been having some experiences after not having any for a lot of years. And I was concerned that my children were having experiences and not telling me. So I drew that face on a napkin, as a matter of fact, and I showed it to them and I asked them, have you ever seen anything like this? And at that point they were like, yeah, not really, no. And then I walked into the bookstore and there were a million books of that
Yeah,
face,
we all did. Yeah. Isn't that
right?
something?
That experience, right? But it was, with that drawing still on my table at home, right? And that's so I wrote to Whitley.
Before the books, you saw them. Yeah, I know.
So I wrote to Whitley immediately, and and as I read the book, I felt concerned that he was so frightened. And so I wrote to share my experiences with them as a child, but also to say, hey, I have a different experience. I mean, yes, I've had some things go on, but I'm not afraid. And, let's talk. And he actually did contact me not too much, maybe a couple weeks later after.
Wow.
And I think I wrote 3 letters to them or
They're
so.
probably at Rice University then.
Oh, they are. I mean,
Yeah.
there was not that long ago, Whitley was he was looking for something. He was doing something, and he had the boxes of those letters out, and he was about to call me, and he pulled a letter out of a box at random, and it happened to be one of my letters. He said, clearly there is no such thing as coincidence, right?
No.
And so, it was that, like, what are the odds out of 10,000 letters and 6 boxes that he pulls at random one letter out, and it's for me. So, so those synchronicities, again, taps on the shoulder by the universe, that we are always being spoken to if only we listen.
I was quite taken by the artwork, and one of his clips he put up showed a table with a lot of pieces of artwork that were sent in with those letters, which the only way you can see them is to go there. And I don't even know if you go there, if they're going to show them to you, but because I told Whitley, we really need to publish these drawings and share them. But he said there's copyright issues and problems in families and things. And it's like, that's a real shame. But I was able to get a high enough resolution frame grab from there. And there were a couple of drawings that really caught my eye. And they were things that I drew that I didn't see anybody else draw back in the 90s.
Yeah.
Early 90s of beings that we call the China dolls, with the black eyes and the bobbed hair and sort of Asian features, which really got me because it looked exactly like my drawing. And there were other drawings of the grays different from the communion book cover that looked also like the grays I started doing around 1990, which is what led Whitley to contacting me when he saw that artwork. He said, how did you know? I wish there was some way that, we could bring that artwork into light so people could see what was being done.
Yes, exactly.
Before the internet and television and TV shows and everything else that happened as a result, because that book changed the world.
It did.
There's one thing Whitley can be sure of, is that when he came forward and he put that book out, it changed our world.
Absolutely.
And I think it changed it for the betterment of humanity.
It validated for people that their experiences were real. And so more people started remembering, and more people started accepting and not just their experiences with the visitors, but accepting experiences of the strange and unusual as part of daily ordinary reality.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is a good thing. I mean, I think
a good thing.
That's actually how I was raised. That was a benefit for me, that my family just accepted that strange and unusual things were part of reality. And, it wasn't abnormal. It wasn't paranormal. It wasn't super normal. It was just, there's an unexplainable stuff. It's okay. My grandmother could see her dead brother, Mac, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was just a thing. I think twice in my childhood, she saw him, and then would go and explain to my parents what he said or what she experienced. But again, this was not unusual. This was just part of life. And so, I had the advantage of being raised in an environment where fear wasn't instilled around those things.
That's really wonderful. Yeah, it was kind of the family secret, and my grandfather was the only one that would talk about it, and then they made fun of him. And that was done out of fear too.
Oh yeah.
Because what if the old Irishman was right?
Yep.
We can't have that.
Yep.
We want to keep our little world in our box where we feel safe and we sleep well at night. And
Yep.
you're not going to keep it out forever. It's going to
It's
it's going to
always
get
in,
into your reality.
it's always in your reality. It's
Yes,
when-
exactly.
it's just that. It's just we're not
Absolutely.
paying attention. All right. Well, unfortunately, I have a plumber that's going to show up in about 2 minutes, and I'm going to need
Well,
to.
it's perfect timing because this was truly a wonderful conversation.
It
Raina.
was. I so appreciate you for inviting me to be on. And
Oh, absolutely. And we
No.
can't wait to see you when you get back out this way. I know you got a lot to deal with, but
I'm working on it. I'm working
I
on
know
it.
you are. In the meantime, we'll always be talking.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you so much. Love you.
Love you.
And
Bye.
thank you everyone that was here tonight, and thank you for your support and all your questions. You're deeply loved by all of us here at Breaking the Silence.
And if anyone has any questions for me, I'm happy to take them from you. I'm happy to have you contact me.
Yes, she's very easy to reach, so, and approachable. Okay. Bye-bye. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.